What's up, guys? It's Chase with Semi-Pro's Garage. We're back at it again. Today what I'm going to be doing is filming the introduction for the electrical video. So with that being said, two things are for certain. Number one, not going to be able to film this in one take. Number two, not going to be able to film this in one video or one part. This is probably going to be something that is 2 to 3 videos that we upload in sequence on YouTube. We are going to go dive into everything from the battery relocation kit that we have on the car that we did from scratch. You can buy a kit. I mean, I think they're $300 or $400. You can get a whole kit. We decided to just make one from scratch, saved us a lot of money, and I actually really love the way that it turned out. We're going to start with that. We're going to probably get that done, the fuse panel and the relay board, and we might get into the switch panel that I have made on the car as well. And then the second video will be probably more of the inputs and outputs on the car. I have printouts of wiring diagrams, you know, the schematics and everything that come with the MS3 Pro harness. A lot of this is going to be MS3 Pro specific, but a lot of it also is going to be, you can transfer it right over to Holley, Fuel Tech, or whatever, because the power in your ground and stuff is, you know, where you tie in using your fuses, your relays, your switchboard, all the inputs and outputs, you know, they all use digital frequency, analog, 12-volt switch power, like all of that stuff is going to transfer over. This video is going to be for people that either want to just do a standalone harness, which a lot of people do, especially any type of motorsports, really, autocross, drag racing, like, you know, whatever you guys are into, we're going to be able to touch on if you just want to do a standalone harness, or if you want to completely wire the car from scratch like we did on this car. So everything I did from scratch, I mean, all the way down to, I'll probably get into another video later that is like more specific to the 4th gen FBODY Camaro and Trans Am cars, because I ended up doing the taillight wiring, the headlight wiring, and all the running lights and everything, all that stuff's from scratch too. So first and foremost, refer to, anytime you're doing an install on the, like for a standalone, refer to the owner's manual and the install guide first, because they're going to be specific to your car and for your motor and everything, and it's going to tell you exactly where you run your power in your ground and where you run your fuel pump wire, your fuel pump relay, your starter relay, your alternator trigger, or your alternator charging wire. It's going to tell you where to do all of that, like per car on your specific harness. So you know, that's where we're going to get into the specifics of the MS3 Pro, the Gen 1 MS3 Pro, and I believe the Evo, the newer version of the MS3 Pro ECUs. All the wiring and stuff is still going to end up being the same. So I'll get to show you, starting with the battery relocation. Then we're just going to follow power up, and I'll go probably as far as the you know, the trans brake solenoids and the boost control solenoids and how they're wired up through the ECU. And I might get into a little bit of the inputs and outputs, probably in part 2 or 3 of this video. I'll be able to show you how I have the car wired up and what inputs and outputs I'm using from my MS3 Pro ECU. So we'll be able to get into the specifics. Like I said, I have printouts of everything, some schematics, some printouts on the relays that I use on the car, which are all normally open 12-volt trigger relays. So I won't go too far into depth, but basically they get a constant power and a constant ground, and then they use a 12-volt trigger going into the relay to trigger the output side of that relay to power your device. So we'll get into all that. I got, like I said, I got printouts. I'll be able to lay everything out and show you guys step by step. But this video is probably going to be more of, it's probably going to contain the most amount of content out of all the videos that I film. The electrical, and then obviously the engine, because we're going to be doing that from bottom to top, and you guys will see the whole process of that in another video. And I believe I might go, I don't think I'm going to go as far as to talking about, you know, unfortunately with the car, I mean, kind of getting sidetracked, but with the car, I won't really be able to show you guys how the inputs and outputs work, because there's obviously no power going to the car. I have, you know, this really isn't going to do much bundled up like that. So I won't be able to show you guys how I have everything put on the car, and how I'm using my inputs and outputs. But what I'll do is a later video, I'll end up, you know, once I get the motor in the car and I can turn power on and everything, I'll probably get my laptop out and show you guys how I have them wired up and how each input and output works on the car. I might be able to get into like setting up loops on the MS3 Pro ECU so that you can use multiple outputs for different things instead of just only having one purpose on that output. So again, that'll probably be the second or third part of this video. And now we're going to go ahead and dive into the electrical on the car. It's been a couple days since we filmed the intro video, so it gave me a little bit of time to get everything in order, and hopefully I have all the material and stuff that I'll need to make this video go as smoothly as possible. Just kind of bear with me because there's so much content and so much that I want to touch on. So I believe I said in my last video that we were going to start with the battery relocation kit. So that's going to be specific to the 4th gen Camaro and Trans Am cars. There is an entire write-up on LS1 Tech that you can follow, and there is a kit and everything that's attached in that write-up. I believe it's the first link that you'll find and you can click on and see all of that. We did, like I said, we did everything from scratch. So I'll touch base on, you know, in this video, what all we used, and every single part that we used in this car, whether it is the fuse panel, the switch panel, the relays, everything is going to be attached in the description in this video. And it's a really, really long list. And I tried to pull up everything that I ordered off of Amazon right out of my order history and just attach everything. And I'm pretty sure that I got everything covered. So I have all my schematics and everything laid out that we're going to touch probably on the relays that I chose to use, and obviously the fuse board. Everybody, you know, everybody knows that if you want something to work on a car, you got to have power, you got to have ground. Without that, not going to work. Everybody knows how a fuse works. Everybody knows, I would hope everybody knows how a switch works. So, now we're going to go ahead and get started on the car, and we are going to, it's kind of be a mix of like, I'm going to be having forward facing camera, and then I'm going to have to probably have it mounted on my head so that I can use both hands to be able to show you guys what we have going on. So, decent amount of editing and everything to go, you know, switching camera angles and everything. So we'll start with the relocation now. And what I will tell you is, one of the tricks that I did, and I'll just start by going back here. Let me grab my flashlight. Got it right here. All right. So, and I will attach, I'll attach in this video right now. It shows you exactly where to come in through your engine bay, which I'll actually, let me walk back up here and show you guys that real quick actually. So on these cars, on these FBODY, these 4th gen FBODY cars, your battery in the factory location was right here up in front of your strut housing. So it was mounted here, and what you end up doing is you end up taking your main power and ground off of the battery and using a power block or power terminal, and you can mount that right where that battery was. And that's also in the write-up on LS1 Tech. There's little the terminals have like anchors, and you can anchor your positive and your negative terminals to the car, and you run the wire then from the engine bay. It attaches there, and then you run your cable from those two terminals, and you can go down along the frame rail here, which a lot of people do. It actually has the factory you have like a little bit of a heat shield here from the factory. You can run it down along the frame rail and come up over and go in, and I believe that there is a cutout that's right around this location. We just made it bigger on the car because of how much we have coming out of the firewall here. I believe that there is a factory grommet and everything here. If there's not, then you know what you're going to have to end up doing. You're going to have to get up under the cowl and get a unibit and drill out, and 100% use a grommet there. Never ever have your wire fed through and run the risk of grounding itself out on any type of bare metal. So definitely use a grommet O-ring or something right there. Piece of rubber hose that you split and run it, so that way it's not going in on a sharp edge. So whenever you run that wire, you run it down in alongside the car, and I'll open the doors up and get to that in a minute. But you end up having those wires come back, and obviously you're going to have everything up under your plastics that are in the car that mount right here, but you're going to run it down along the inside of the door, which I'll show you that now. So you're going to have it run in, come in up here on the firewall, somewhere in where we have ours coming in right there, and run it down along under your carpet, or you can run it on the outside of the carpet. And there's a little plastic trim piece that runs along the bottom side of the door that you can pop off. There's another plastic that mounts up here that conceals all this. You run it down inside that plastic and run it back in here. So what we did on my car was we used jumper cables. So your main power and main ground, because if you really want to try to find 1 gauge or 2 gauge wire, you are going to pay an astronomical amount of money to run that wire from your battery up to the front of the car. So we ended up doing a jumper cable. It works amazing. I thought that was a really good little trick that we did. It's single gauge. I have that attached in the description as well. You can run your jump, and I believe it comes in 20 feet. You don't have to strip them. You don't have to do anything. You can separate them like I did here right at the end, where I ran my power up to my kill switch, which is mounted right there in the factory antenna location. And that grommet and everything, it fit perfect. So the kill switch that I use is also in the description if you wanted to do something like that to your 4th gen. But we split the ground, and obviously I believe our main ground is run, yeah, just right here. Let me get my, so I have these clip style battery terminals. This isn't doing anything. These are just like a press down, and they use a compression, and it seals around the battery terminal. It does a really, really good job. So this like pops down over top of the negative and the positive. These will also be attached in the description. So we have our main grounded right here on the car, and that I believe that's actually. I'm not 100% sure now. I think that's actually where the marker light is. No, it's not. It's a different bracket. But there's a bracket bolt right there that we ended up using to just secure the main ground. Make sure that you're grinding take a little wire wheel or some sandpaper, whatever, to get a really good contact patch with no paint for your ground. And then we ran, obviously, our main power goes through the kill switch first, which is mounted there. And then your power and your ground go here. And I have another little fuse panel right there that I use for, just gets power and ground and your fuses. And I have a little switch that I have mounted under one of my regulators, which I'll show you guys. And that fuse panel there is basically for the power for my transmission cooler, and I punched out the lock on this car. Evidently it's an issue where these locks commonly fail. You got to punch them out, and I made just a push button release. So this just gets constant power and ground, and it's called a momentary switch, and I have this attached in the description as well. So we will go ahead and follow the power down along inside the car, and I'll be able to show you guys that now. And bear with me, guys. Like I said, it's just a lot of content. We're already pretty far into this video. So power comes up over my wheel well to my fuse block here that just gets the ground right there through one of the speaker holes. I put a nut on the back side. May or may not want to do something like that, but there's always an option for it. And especially when you're wiring a car from scratch, it's a no-brainer that you want to have, instead of running ridiculously long wires from your firewall, you know, all the way down and having to come around like we did here, you would want to have a power source that's fused and switched and everything in the back of the car. It just makes the most amount of sense to do that. So yet again, another Amazon part that I have attached in the description. My little switch for my compressors right here. Of course, my 300 amp breaker that I have, that I have a habit of just doing that every time I get out of the car, just to make sure that there's no draw on the battery. This car can sit for months and months, and there's nothing that it has any type of draw on the battery to drain it. So we have no problem starting the car after it's sitting all winter, or however long we want to do it, however long we want to have it sitting for. So I always just push that and break power so there's no draw. But 100%, if you're going to wire something from scratch, or if you're going to do this battery relocation, I mean, you guys need to have this. Like I touched on before, that saved, we had an alternator failure, and it actually saved my ECU. It ended up backfeeding and popped this breaker, which I actually read about has happened. It's more common than what you think, especially in drag racing, when you do something and take it to the extent that we have on the car. So got to get one. Have it attached in the description as well. So then we go ahead and follow our power down along, and like I said, I got my turbo kit laying everywhere. So power comes along here, and right here in this junction, where you can see, this is I believe this is my fans. It's either my fans. I'll be able to tell you when we look at what I'm going to end up doing here is I'm also going to attach in the video, and I have printouts of it as well. And I'll be able to show you guys the printouts of where you tie in your fan, your this is for your fuel pump. My fuel pump wire here is the red wire. I couldn't even really tell you what the green is. I'd have to go back through and look at how I actually have everything laid out. But the layout for the install guide tells you exactly what wires to use. And like I said, I'll go ahead and attach that in the video probably right now. And be able to show you guys, it shows you exactly what wire, where you got to tie in because you're going to be tying into your factory your body harness. So the harness that you still have remaining, I mean, inside your car, you're going to have this tied into. So the wiring goes here and comes up, and I have it where I have my main ground here. It's my main ground distribution block, and then I have my main power distribution block here. And what I can tell you is how I have it wired on the car is I have my main junction there, if you guys can see that. Let me get my light wherever I put that. So I have my main junction with all my power, and I know that blue wire is actually for my third fuel pump, guys. So that's not for my fans. My fan wire is inside of the large wire loom along with everything else. The bare wires that I have here are just the ones that I ran later after I had put everything in. And instead of undoing all of my clips and undoing all of my zip ties and cutting everything and redoing it all, I ran it just like that. Not going to be a huge issue, but I mean, I will tell you that the right way to do it is to run it all inside your wire loom, so you don't run the risk of shorting anything out. But when we did everything, we were just so far into it that we ran these wires the way that we did to save some time. But my main power comes here, and I have two of those. One of them goes to my alternator, and the other one goes to my starter. So I believe that what you're gonna run into is you're gonna see a lot of people that tell you that you need to run your power to your main power through your alternator, then your starter. If you do your starter first, whenever you go to start your car, because of the huge amount of amps that your starter pulls, you may have a problem with, especially, it depends on what type of ECU you guys have. Even sometimes, and I don't have mine like that. I have my alternator and my starter have their own wires that run to them. They're not daisy chained or anything like that. And everything's relayed and fused and all that stuff. But every once in a while, whenever I go to start the car up, it will, my dash will not stay on. So the MS3 Pro is, at least from what I know, all of them really, well, if it sees below like 11.4, 11.5 volts, I just have to reset my dash because it's just, voltage sensitive. Some ECUs, they see too much of a voltage drop and it'll kick off your fuel pumps. Like you guys can run into all kinds of problems. So I have my main power going here, and then my starter and my alternator and everything have their own relay and have their own source of power. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and I'll show you follow power over, which comes right over here where those red wires are. And I have it going to my fuse panel, which I'll show you guys now. Go ahead and undo this. Screws a lot longer than I remember. There we go. And as you can see, power right there at the top of my fuse panel is that red wire that comes over here. And I have it where I put a jumper across both sides so that both sides of this fuse board would be powered from one wire, which is completely fine because everything is fused and everything has its own relay, which you can see here. And what I will do now in the video is I'll go ahead and show you the process of, I have a before of when I pulled the dash out of the car, and I'll put that in the video now. What I will tell you is, like I said, I started with my fuse board here, and the lower grounding and everything section is all one piece that I have obviously grounded at my main distribution block here for my grounds is all right there. The backing to this, what I did was, this is a high impact plastic, ABS plastic. And what I did was I laid out the shape of my block off plate, my HVAC block off plate, and I traced that shape out, and that's what I put everything on. I like that a lot. That was a little idea that I came up with, instead of mounting it, trying to, I mean, really this is the best place for you to mount it. There's really almost no other option if you want to do something like this. Now, with just the engine harness, if you're not wiring from scratch, your engine harness, you can just come in through that grommet, that you have the factory grommet that's up under there, and where MS3 Pro will tell you to put your main ECU is in, you can put it in your glove compartment, or you can mount it up under the dash right there. So you'll still have you'll have the dash and everything out here, and the ECU will mount inside, and then obviously you have your two main connectors, and then the rest of it just runs. It kind of loops down here. I have it looping this way, and then it just circles right back up and goes. Everything goes through that grommet in my firewall, which you can see right there. So everything runs back through there, so you don't have to go, if you just want to do your standalone harness, all of this stuff is going to be probably irrelevant to you. I'm basically just touching on, if you do want to add switches, or if you want to go this far, this is what you're going to need. So now, with the shape of that block off plate, it fit in there perfect. It's really the best and only way for you to mount everything. So you're going to want to start with your fuse board, get your relays laid out, and you want to use, like, however many relays you want, a relay per device. I chose to do 8, and I have I'm using all 8 actually. So all of them have a device on them, other than I believe, no, I'm using all 8. So everything's got a device. So however many devices you're going to want to, and you're going to have to sit down and think about how many things you're going to want to power with this, so you know you have, and do it all in one shot. You don't want to be going in, adding relays later in and making it more complicated, because then you run into a situation where you have to add more wiring outside of wire loom and worry about everything you have secured and tied in, and just, it junks everything up. So do 8 or 10 or however many relays you want, so that way you know that you have everything laid out how you're going to want it for the amount of devices you're going to want to power. So power comes in, goes through the fuses. I have it running to my relay. So these relays, and I'm actually getting ready to cut this video off, and we're gonna dive into the schematics and how to actually wire these relays. So you guys know, we've established main power, main ground. You're coming in, going to your fuse board. Everything is fused, and the amperage of these fuses is according to what it's going to be powering. Obviously, my radiator fans and everything, and my pump that I use for the cooling system on the car is a higher amp rating, so I use a bigger fuse. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and clip this video, and I will also attach the version of this little schematic for the relays that I use, and we'll go over, and I'll show you the paper version as well. So you'll be able to pause this video at any point to look at what I have attached, and we'll go do that now. All right, guys, so went ahead and switched to the head-mounted camera. So hopefully you guys can see everything that I see. Going through a little bit of trouble with the camera, trying to get it to work right. So hopefully you guys, you know, I want to go ahead and, like I said, I will attach the digital copies of each one of these printouts. I just wanted to be able to hold this up and explain the diagram. So once we get past this schematic of how the relays work, this will be the end of our part 1 video. Part 2 is going to be, we're going to get back in the car and we're going to follow power to my switch panel, and I'll show you guys the boost solenoids, whether you want to do, this will be diving more into once you guys have the car wired all the way and you're ready for power and to actually run your boost solenoids and do your plumbing and everything. I'll be able to touch base on that. That'll be in part 2 or 3 of our wiring video that we're going to do. So with this schematic of our relays, like I said, I use the same Amazon relays for everything in the car. I think the most commonly used relays, at least that I know in automotive, are a normally open 12-volt trigger relay. You can get ones that are triggered by a ground, different voltages and everything, but for what we, for the automotive, as far as I know, a normally open, I don't even know why you would run a normally closed, but basically it has a electromagnet, your little coil in the head of your relay that is normally open, and whenever it sees its switched power source, it then, which is here, and I'll show you guys that, it then closes and sends power out to your device. So here is your constant ground and your constant power, which your constant power goes here on, and there everything is numbered on the head of your relay. It's 2 pieces. It's got the head and it's got the lower section where the wiring is that plugs into the head. It's like your little terminal block. So obviously you have your power fused, which is how we have it on our car. So it goes to the fuses first, then the relay. So constant ground here goes on terminal 85 on these relays. Some of them may be numbered different, but this is just exactly how the part number that I have listed in the description, this is how this relay works. Constant ground goes to terminal 85. You have your power that is fused. Then you have your constant power goes on 30, terminal 30. Your power continues, and this will be your switched power. Your switched power goes through your switch, which is in the off position. When you flip it on, it goes to terminal 86. When this terminal sees power, it closes that connection, your electromagnet in the relay, and then sends power to your device. So, especially in drag racing, I have everything on a switch. You want everything to be fused and switched. You don't want to wire something to, you can have everything wired consistently to ground, but you never want to have something constantly powered because it's a draw on the battery. Other than if you want to do, like I have a thermistor, which is it is a temperature, it works like, it basically has a little coil in it that swells when it gets hot and it closes the connection. It has a constant power. It has a power going to it that I fused, but I did not put on a switch. So it has a power that's fused that runs to it. And whenever it is it's on one side of the thermistor, and whenever the temperature of the trans fluid goes through and it gets hot, it closes the connection and it sends power through the other side, which then powers the fan. So that's, in a situation like that, you can have constant power. So, but that's not a constant draw because it's not making the connection and actually running the fan until the trans fluid gets hot enough to make that normally open circuit close. So these are the relays, like I said, again, I'll do. So you have your constant ground, your constant power, your fused power here. That's a constant power that goes into 30. Your switch, which is just a regular rocker switch, it has off position and an on position, and it just the power and the ground, which I probably shouldn't even go into that, but the reason it's got a power and a ground and everything is because your switches are lit. So you're going to want to see whenever something's on, because when you flip it to the on position to power your device is when that switch, that the light on that switch will light up. So that's why you have your ground and your power there. But it's going to be off, and when you flip it on, your switch power goes in here, which then powers your device. So everything like main power, ignition, transcooler, whatever you want to have powered as a device, water pump, whatever it is, if you got an electric water pump like we do on the car, everything is switched power. So what I'm going to do now is the next step, now that I've showed you the rundown, the relay, this will end part 1 of our wiring video. Part 2, when we start filming, we're going to be back in the car and I'll be able to show you our switchboard and where our relay ties into that, and then where our relay ties in on this end here, our power coming into our switch, and then where the power comes back out of the switch as our trigger. We use, I call terminal blocks, and I'll be able to show you how power goes into one side, and then we just have directly opposite of that, power comes in the top on that same, I guess you could say, same terminal on the lower section is where we have all of our devices powered off of. So I don't want to hardwire anything. I want to be able to take things off of either take it off at a connector, or have terminal blocks that you can just unplug. If you ever want to remove your engine harness, or you ever want to remove a device or whatever from the circuit, you have a terminal block or a connector. When you hardwire, what I call hardwiring is where you run something straight off of your relay and you power it directly to whatever device. You can't just remove that device from the circuit. Now you have to remove everything or cut the wire if you've hardwired it in and you haven't made it to where you can unplug something or whatever. So now that we're done with part 1, we're going to start filming part 2 of our video. So stay tuned, guys.